In this video, I'm going to look at just how much influence big alcohol really has over your drinking habit. If you don't know me, I'm Kevin O'Hara. I quit booze in 2013. I'm a full-time coach helping people to get alcohol out of their thinking over at habitsv2.com. All right, let's go to this comment first. This guy says is Juan Manuel, and he says, sadly, big alcohol is connected with big pharma, the jail system, and big food, among others. It creates dysfunction, and dysfunction is big business for other groups and industries. In my opinion, alcohol regulation will not go as far as tobacco, not even close. Alcohol poisoning is part of their agenda. So I think we've all blamed the booze at some stage, or we've all blamed the alcohol itself for our problems. You know, if it wasn't for the alcohol, the demon drink, then we would be okay. We've all blamed people in our lives. If it wasn't for this person or that person, we'd be okay. And I think when you're starting to blame big alcohol, it takes it up to a different level. I mean, this guy is saying big alcohol is connected with big pharma, the jail system, and big food, among others. It creates dysfunction, and dysfunction is big business for other groups and industries. And then he goes on to say alcohol poisoning is part of their agenda, which at the end of it, he talks about the tobacco and alcohol regulation. So he's talking basically about regulations by big government from that perspective. So, you know, I prefer to have big alcohol in my life than big government, if I'm being honest with you, right? Now, obviously, you know, when you take big alcohol on its own, that's a problem. But what this guy is doing, or what a lot of people like this are doing, is they're taking other things like big food, big pharma, they're taking the jail system into account. They're taking all of these things and saying that all of these things together are the things that are going to create this dysfunction in your life, dysfunction in yourself as a person, right? And you know, I think it's brilliant use of your brain, right, to stay stuck and to get yourself into that position where you can't make a move because you've created such a big obstacle for yourself that there's no moving away from that. You know, how can you do anything else in your life? How can you really stop drinking alcohol when the advertisement is there all the time, right? But at the end of the day, there's no force behind any of this. You know, it's completely voluntary. Nobody's coming around to your house and saying, you have to take this, you have to take the other, you have to take any pharmaceuticals, you have to drink any drink, right? You know, the big alcohol, I mean, there's no such thing in Europe for big pharma to advertise. I think there's only 2 countries in the world where that's allowed to happen, and that's the United States and New Zealand, if I'm not mistaken. You're not allowed to advertise big pharma here. Big food, yeah. Big alcohol for sure, but the influence of those people that's dwindling. There's more and more regulations coming out, which, I mean, I don't want to see it, but I don't see it anyway. I don't look at advertisements. So it's like, again, it's in your control of what you do. Big alcohol will dangle this big juicy worm in front of your face, but you don't have to grab it. You know, it's just a bait to try and pull you in. You know, what about personal responsibility? At the end of the day, when you're looking for regulations, when you're trying to replace big alcohol with big government, you know, regulations over responsibility, where does that lead you? You know, it's leading people down where they're trying to get the government to take the responsibility for them so they don't have to do that, you know? And, you know, that kind of life is not going to be, you know, you're not going to get very far in life if you think like that. So if you are trying to move forwards in your life, if you want to live the best life that you can live, if you want to be contented, if you want to take your own path, if you want to take control of your life, if you want to own what you're doing in your life, if you want to have purpose and reach that purpose, then, you know, you've got to take each thought and action and behavior. You've got to take each habit that you've got, and you've got to ask yourself, does this take away power from me, or does it give me power? Right? When you're talking about external blame versus internal responsibility, one thing takes away power and the other thing gives you power. One thing gains power for you, the other thing takes it away, right? So every time you blame something outside of yourself, whether it's, your mother or your father or your friends, right? Or the alcohol itself, then you're taking away responsibility from yourself. You're giving away your power to those things outside of yourself. Big alcohol, big pharma, big food, right? These are all blame tactics to take the power away from yourself, to take the responsibility away from yourself. Every time you accept responsibility for yourself, you gain power. So, like I said, multiply that by this huge conspiracy, massive organizations, big cabals, right? And what it does is it removes any sense of personal agency, of personal responsibility for you. What's the fucking point in even trying to do these things? Because dysfunction is built into the business, right? Poisoning is intentional. What's that going to do to you? It's going to drain your motivation. It's going to make quitting alcohol or quitting these foods or quitting anything seem pointless, because it's not achievable, because there's so many of these big organizations and big groups that are out there that are trying to scupper your plans. So here's what we're going to do. First, break down where it is that you can, where the image that you've got in your head breaks down to your ability to take action. So what I mean by that is, when we're thinking about things in terms of big alcohol, right, it's not something that we can really wrap our heads around. It's a massive international business, multi-billions, all that kind of stuff. Break it down to the distribution. There's nothing you can do there, right, unless you're going to go out and with a placard on the street shouting and swearing at the distributors, calling them drug dealers or whatever it is that you're trying to do, right? The place where you can make the decision is in the liquor store or the pub. And it's easy to do that. You just don't go in. It's your personal responsibility. Nobody's forcing you into these places. Nobody's forcing you to buy this stuff. The second thing is, it's your job to motivate yourself, right? To flip the switches that you need to flip to move forwards, to get to the place that you want to go, right? To think logically about your thoughts and ask yourself those questions. Does this give you power over yourself, or does it take it away from you? Thinking about big alcohol in this sense, thinking about big pharma, thinking about all these products that are out there, all these ways that they've devised to try and trick you into going in there. Does that take away from your power to respond to yourself? Or does it come down to the simple thing of, I can say no. I can just make the decision, I'm not going to buy this stuff. And what does that do? It gives you all the power, right? The third thing is, break all of these down even further, right? So take the alcohol company, makes the stuff, sends it out to the distributors, puts it into the pubs, puts it into the liquor stores. But even if you buy it, right? Even if you buy it and bring it home, it still remains harmless, right? If it can be the most potent liquor in the world, as long as it remains in that bottle, as long as you don't crack it open and pour it into your mouth, literally, that is the only time that it ever becomes a problem for you, is if you lift it and pour it in your mouth. That's the only point of entry for you. So it doesn't matter how good big alcohol are, how tasty looking they make that worm, right? You can wipe it out with that one single decision. I'm not going to do this. I'm keeping the alcohol out of my mouth. Onwards and upwards. Take care.